go. Hey everybody, and welcome to Fitlosophy, presented by Better University. Today, it is just going to be Victoria and myself here at All Access Fitness in Shrewsbury, Massachusetts. And we've got a topic today that we just happen to have an expert on right here. So, if you haven't noticed, today's title is Kiss Your Nutrition. Now, we don't literally mean you should try and kiss your nutrition, because first off, I don't know how you would go about that. But what it is KISS is an acronym. I believe it's actually a popular military acronym, or it used to be a popular military acronym.
I didn't know that.
And it stands for Keep It Simple, Silly. Okay, I changed the last word just because it sounds a little better. It's not quite as demeaning. The original acronym is Keep It Simple, Stupid. But nobody here is stupid. None of you guys are stupid. But what we do tend to find, especially when we get into the nutritional topics, is that there's just so much information and nobody knows where to start, especially if you're coming from a background where you don't have a lot of information to begin on. I can remember, especially very early on in my career, when I'd start working with clients, I'd be like, hey, you need to track your calories, you need to work on balanced macronutrition. Oh, you don't know what macros are? Quick, here, let me give you all this information on proteins, carbohydrates, fats. Oh, carbohydrates, guess what? There's more than one type of carbohydrate. Hey! So, it does tend to get a little convoluted with all the information that's out there.
Right, but also I feel like not only do people have to gather information about this huge topic, they're taught things that are incorrect.
Mm-hmm.
So then we have to correct that first before even starting. So it's tough because everybody eats. So everybody has an opinion.
I like that one. Everybody eats, so everyone has an opinion. Yeah, very good.
About it, yeah.
Well, it's also funny. I've always found this to be comical, is how quickly information can change too when we discover new things.
Right.
I remember growing up, and they brought out the food pyramid, and they put it in front of us, and they said, hey, this is a diagram of how you should eat. This is what balanced nutrition looks like. Well, the entire bottom of the pyramid, i.e. the biggest portion, was all grains.
Yep, grains.
So essentially what they were telling us to do was to make 2/3 of our diet carbohydrates. Now, I suppose if you're an Olympic swimmer or a marathon runner, you probably do want that many carbohydrates in your diet because they do function as a very good source of fuel. But in that same respect, when we start talking about carbohydrates, we get into starchy carbohydrates. We get into carbohydrates that closer resemble sugar chemically versus carbohydrates that are further from that, and how they react and chemically break down inside the body. But that's not what we're here to do today. What we're here to do today, wow, I did say it right, but it kind of sounded like a tongue twister, didn't it? Is we're going to give you guys some tips, tricks that have worked really well for us, have worked really well with people that we've worked with, that are based in just the very simplest things that you can do today without having any information or knowledge. Just trust that we're giving you good information that you can start to enact in your own life and instantly start to see benefits from that.
Yeah.
So one of the first things that comes to mind when I think of keeping it simple but nutrition is more vegetables. I can't think of anyone, including some vegetarians, that eat enough vegetables.
Yeah.
Now you may be thinking that's kind of weird, right? Wait a minute, how is a vegetarian not getting enough vegetables?
Oh my goodness.
Well, vegetarianism does oftentimes allow for cheese and nuts and bread, things of that nature. So what ends up happening is, if you didn't like vegetables to begin with and you shifted your diet to vegetarianism and you're still not getting those vegetables, you tend to have a much higher fat diet, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it is that lack of micronutrition from the vegetables that you should be getting that you're not getting. So, Victoria, what would you say to a client who told you, I really don't like vegetables. How do I eat more vegetables?
That's a tough one. Usually, so you can you can put just about anything into a smoothie and kind of mask it. Especially, I know like spinach is really good to do that with. Kale, I've seen people do. People have the most difficulty, I think, with the green leafy vegetables. So that's a good way to do that. Yeah, I don't know. Even if they have to start off like dipping carrots or celery in some dressing or something, like trying to, or putting it into like a salad, something.
Does peanut butter count as a dressing?
Yeah, like ants on a log.
Right?
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah,
Right,
why not? Like if that's how you have to start, whatever.
So it's funny you bring that up because that's actually the exact method that I myself
Really?
used to start to get more vegetables in my diet.
I didn't know that.
I started juicing and doing smoothies.
Okay.
I didn't use it as a meal replacement though. That's
Right.
definitely a good thing to understand is I wasn't utilizing shakes or smoothies as like a, hey, instead of eating breakfast or instead of eating lunch or instead of eating dinner. No, I used it as a dietary supplement. Now granted, supplementally speaking, they were all whole foods, so it wasn't like a pill I was taking, but I was supplementing my diet in the fact that I wasn't getting enough vegetables. So I would start to mix them with fruits, a little bit of yogurt, maybe some milk, just to mask the flavor,
Exactly, yeah.
because quite honestly, most vegetables, when I put them in my mouth, I would do...
Wait, for how long? Till when?
Oh, goodness. I think I probably started doing this at about the age of 20. And I don't think it was until I got to my mid-20s that I could really eat whole vegetables and enjoy them.
Yeah.
Then it probably wasn't until a few years after that that I could eat raw vegetables and enjoy them.
That's a good point, too. So when you cook something, it kind of, I don't know if it does sort of get rid of some of that flavor.
Oh, yeah.
And then maybe it will give you a better texture. Because some of the textures
So
are
that's
different.
another good thing to
Yeah.
bring up. So if you're not getting enough vegetables because you don't like them, break that down a little bit more. What is it you don't like?
Right.
Is it the flavor? Is it the texture? Is it because you just don't like yourself? Just kidding on that one. But for me, a lot of vegetables, it was a texture thing. It wasn't so much the flavor. It really was.
Okay.
Tomatoes were the
Squishy?
biggest offender.
Yeah. Huh.
It was just something about the texture that would give me that metallic-y taste on my tongue, and then my stomach would just kind of start to do that turning over thing, and I could not eat them.
Yeah.
So if texture is your deal, one of the things you can try is different cooking methods.
Right. There's so many.
Pan frying versus baking versus boiling versus steaming. Those different cooking methods are going to completely change the texture of the vegetable for you. If you're pan frying it, they're going to get a little bit crispier. So they're still going to have that signature vegetable snap to it when you eat it. If you bake them, they will also be crispy, but they'll also get a little bit softer depending on how long you bake them versus how short you bake them. So if you prefer your texture to be a little bit more rigid, cook them for a shorter time. If you prefer your texture to be a little bit softer, cook it for a longer time. Boiling, steaming, now those are going to make them very chewable. And by that I mean if you boil or steam them long enough, you could essentially make a mashed vegetable.
Yeah.
I've definitely been known to sometimes cook my carrots and my broccolis to the point where they just melt in your mouth. That texture is also not for everybody. But again, at the end of the day, you got to find what works for you, right? Because I can give you all the advice in the world, but if it's not something that's going to work for you, you're not going to do it. You're not going to repeat it. It's not going to give you that same kind of follow through. So play around with cooking your vegetables different ways, especially if you haven't tried steaming, boiling, baking, frying. Try each one of those to see which one helps you get more in. So moving on from there, we still want to kind of go a little bit further with vegetables. So one of the most interesting things is potatoes. Potatoes are a vegetable, right?
Yep, they are.
But
they're a starchy vegetable. So I'm trying to think. We have squash, zucchini, potatoes, sweet potatoes, corn. Cauliflower. Is it?
Is cauliflower a starchy vegetable? I don't know.
Oh my goodness.
Oh.
Wow.
We're going to have to put a little pin in that one. I don't think it is.
I don't either.
But it's interesting you say that because
I don't think it is.
I've seen a lot of recipes, especially lately, where people are replacing what would be the carbohydrate in the dish with cauliflower. Now, of course, that being said, we should also denote that vegetables are in fact carbohydrates. Just like fruits are carbohydrates, just like grains are carbohydrates. So.
And it has a little bit of protein too.
Yes.
A little bit. But yeah, I'm thinking, so I'm gluten-free. I eat gluten-free, and I got a pizza crust that was cauliflower, so there must be some kind of starch, right? Or else it wouldn't.
Yeah, it wouldn't hold together.
Oh, I gotta know this. But anyways, yeah. So they are not equal. So, for example, a serving of non-starchy vegetables, so like green beans, everything else besides what we kind of just talked about, I think it has 5 grams of carbs, and a serving of starchy vegetables has 15 grams of carbs.
Ooh, big
so
difference
they're very
there.
different, and I think it actually has about the same amount of protein, but see, it's much different.
So not all vegetables are created equal, but you should be eating more vegetables. But specifically, you should be eating more vegetables that are not the starchy kind. But that being said, if you can replace a lot of the processed carbohydrates that you're getting, or some of the sugary carbohydrates that you're getting, with a starchy carbohydrate, that's also going to be super beneficial for you.
Yeah, that's ideal. Mm-hmm.
So we talked about the big one is just getting more vegetables into the body is going to do wonders for your health. It's going to do wonders for any weight loss goals you might have. It'll probably help your sleep as well if you're pretty unregulated, because, well, more micronutrients, more holes are getting filled in your diet. But I think, I kind of just lost my my train of thought.
I did want to mention about the fiber though in vegetables. So yeah, whole veggies have a lot of fiber, so that keeps you full longer, keeps your gut regular. So there's many benefits. Oh, antioxidants and the color can help prevent cell damage. Yep. We can go on forever.
I'm glad you brought that up though, because that's a good springboard for what I was trying to get to in my last kind of ramble on. But another way in which just increasing your vegetable intake will be beneficial for you is the space that you're using up for those vegetables is going to be less space that you could be filling with junk food.
Right.
So that goes back to what you were saying with the fiber and the fullness feeling. Because when you get down to it, hunger is a very basic instinct. We have 2 particular triggers. One is our nutrient trigger, the other is our fullness trigger. If both of those triggers are not met, we feel hungry and we want to eat. But if your nutrition trigger is met, your fullness trigger is met, you feel satiated, you feel content. You don't have that craving, so to speak. Because at the end of the day, a craving isn't your body saying, oh, I want ice cream. It's saying, hey, I'm not full. Or it's saying, hey, I'm missing a micronutrient. So if you have a savory craving or a salty craving, typically what that means is there's some micronutrient that is associated with savory or salty that your body wants.
Yeah.
Now, we don't always necessarily translate those signals very well, so we'll grab a bag of chips or a handful of cookies or ice cream because, I've got a craving.
Right.
But oftentimes when you're in a situation like that, like let's say you've got a late night craving for some cookies, well, maybe it's really just the fat that you're craving. Try a small spoonful of peanut butter. See if that does it for you. If not, then it might be something a little bit more sweet you need. Maybe a handful of berries and a half a cup yogurt. That could do it for you too.
Yeah.
So these are things to recognize and at least be aware of. Because once you're aware of these things, it's going to give you that opportunity to be more in control of it. The last thing you want to do is surrender control. You don't want to blame the universe for why things the way they are, especially when there are certain things and aspects we can control. Because quite frankly, there's a lot of stuff in life you can't control. So let that be what it is and take the things that you can. But without spending too much time on vegetables, because again, we could rap for hours, we could even go much more into detail and depth, but again, we want to bring this into keep it simple. So number 2, this is the other big step you can take today to start to improve your health, get a better understanding of your nutritional awareness, and to just do good things for your body in general. Cutting back on processed foods and starting to eliminate sugary foods from your diet. Now, not just sugary foods, but sugary beverages as well.
So it is incredible the amount of weight that people put on just from drinking beverages. Soda at one point, the U.S. was selling more soda than water bottles at one point.
I believe that.
This has passed. I feel like we are past this point. But so even just somebody who drinks caloric beverages all the time, just switching that up with like a flavored water or going to like fat-free milk, or even if you have to start with like a diet drink, although they have all those artificial sweeteners, maybe that's better than the full sugar-free if you're trying to lose weight. It depends who you are. So cutting out the drinks, and that includes alcohol too. Everything. Be honest with yourself.
So I always like to do a little bit of math when I illustrate this point.
Yeah.
So let's say you have one sugary beverage per day. Just one. Now, I mean, that's being pretty generous because I know back when I was drinking sodas, I was having 2 or 3 a day.
Yeah.
And, sometimes even more than that if it was a weekend. The average soda beverage is going to have about 120 calories in it. So we take that into mind. Okay, one a day, 120 calories. We're going to round that down to 100 just to make things easier. 7 days a week, that's 700 extra calories from just drinking one soda a day in a single week. Now, a little bit more math tells us that 3,000 calories is about the amount of calories you find in 1 pound of fat. So, after a month of drinking sugary beverages, that is a little bit more than a pound.
And that's just one, 12-ounce soda? One 12-ounce soda a day.
So, again, if you have one soda or more and you start to work on cutting that back, you'll be amazed at all the things that will start to change for you, specifically with weight that you're holding on to. Because suddenly, your calorie intake is no longer going to be exceeding or greatly exceeding what you're actually utilizing and burning in a given day.
Yeah, so we mentioned this in another episode, but I am sober and I don't drink alcohol. And when I stopped drinking alcohol, I lost 10 pounds. Like, even just being a small person, and I still lost 10 pounds. That's how much it matters. Yeah, and it's just so easy to just drink something. You don't even think about it. So.
Well, think about how easy it is to get good stuff into your body via a smoothie or a shake.
Yeah.
It's just as easy to put sugar into your body.
If you choose the right thing. I was going to say something about... juices. Okay.
Yes. I'm glad you brought that up.
I love and hate juice. So if you're going to pick a juice, pick one that says 100% fruit juice on it. And the serving size of that is half of a cup because it's very dense with sugars usually. So be careful with especially cranberry juice. It's difficult to find one that has the no added sugar because it's such a tart juice, but they're all like the cranberry cocktails, and it's just try to stay away from that stuff. I think that's about juice.
Yeah. So, but that's a good point.
Yeah.
Is if you are starting to cut sodas out, don't turn to fruit juices as your alternative,
right.
Because again, there is a lot of sugar in fruit. There is a lot of sugar in fruit juice. Even the natural fruit juices, the ones that are 100% juice, there's still going to be a pretty decent chunk of sugar. So if you don't want to eliminate those things completely from your diet, and if you don't want to, you shouldn't, because quite frankly, again, at the end of the day, your happiness and how you choose to live your life is the most important thing. And as long as your choices aren't affecting anyone else, then you really shouldn't have to worry about it too much. But from that perspective, if you are cutting back, don't replace it with juices and keep your juice intake relatively small too. I think Maybe every other day I'll have a half cup juice just to mix my creatine with. You know, way outside the realm of keeping it simple, but the reason I do that is because creatine binds more readily with sugary carbohydrates. That's why I take it with my juice, because I'm trying to make my system kind of absorb it and utilize it a little bit quicker. But that's just your little science fun fact for the day.
Resist.
I mean, I've got all the information. I can't help but talk about it. So
I just want to go over the good drinks. So milk, especially fat-free milk, if you can. Water, of course, flavored water. What else? 100% fruit juice. There's really not that many healthy ones, to be honest.
Well, the funny thing is, though, all of them share one common thing. They're mostly water.
Right.
At the end of the day, all beverages are mostly water. And I can't tell you how many people I've worked with that are like, I just don't like the taste of water. I'm like, the taste of water? What does water taste like?
Because you're 70% it. Like, flavored water then.
Yeah. And again, there are a lot of artificial stuff in that. You know, they do use the sweeteners that are chemically based.
Right.
Don't go overboard with those. At the end of the day, the goal is to get closer and closer to the natural, the whole.
Exactly.
Which actually is where we're going to jump into the third thing. So, more vegetables, less sugar, especially sugary beverages, and finally, less processed foods, more whole foods. So, what is the difference between a whole food and a processed food? I like to use this very simple definition. If the closer an item of food resembles its original form, the closer to being a whole food it is. So, for example, a tomato and a banana and a turkey are whole foods. They most resemble their original form. So that being said, applesauce is processed, but it's not as processed as maybe a Go-Gurt applesauce. So
yes.
You really do have these tiers of processing.
Right. Yeah. Well, the first one would be like, I think automatically about meat, because some of meat processing is just kind of like separating it and like, that's mechanical processing. They do add some stuff to that, but but then we talk about sausage, and that's like a very much more processed meat instead of just kind of like cutting it into the pieces that you cook. So yeah, there's different levels, like you said.
Mm-hmm. So when somebody asks me, they say, hey, what health bar would you recommend I start eating? I look at them and I say, which animal does the bar come from? But it's crazy how the supplement and fitness industry tries to push these health foods when they're really not healthy or good for you. They're just very processed ingredients. Again, at the end of the day, whole foods are always going to be your best bet. You're going to get the most nutrition from them. You're going to feel satiated and fuller longer. And you also don't have to really worry about, well, what's in it? Well, you know what's in it because you can see it. It's right there. It's in front of you. It's very plain. So my challenge to you people out there is take any of those health bars or food products that you think are healthy because some really clever advertisement has convinced you they're healthy, and just start looking through the ingredient list and see if A, you can pronounce them all, B, it's less than 10 ingredients, or C, it's not loaded with artificial chemicals to replace any of the flavors that they're taking out to make it healthy.
Yeah, and be careful of vague terms like natural.
That's always a fun one because what is natural?
Nothing.
So I'll share a very fun fact with you guys, and full disclosure, if you like natural flavored things that are raspberry flavored, you're definitely going to want to mute the stream or turn it off right now. So, natural raspberry flavor, believe it or not, comes from a beaver's anal gland. Yes, that's right. You heard me correctly. Natural raspberry flavor is really beaver butt. There is no raspberry in it whatsoever.
Oh my God. So I have to tell you something now.
Oh boy.
There are 2 different flavored seltzers that we have available at work. And I get one every day, and it's orange or raspberry. And I think I've gotten the raspberry once after he said that. Nope. Always get the orange. I never told him that before, though.
Oh, that's funny. But it's again that whole thing with very clever labeling. There's little tricks around everything. They don't have to give you all the information because the FDA says they don't.
Right. Yeah, crazy.
So you are your best advocate. You always will be. You always have been. And when you trust that a company is going to have your best interests at heart, what you have to understand is at the end of the day, money talks. A company cannot be successful without making money. This company cannot be successful without making money. So at the end of the day, yes, we're trying to get you to buy our product. Now, the difference between us and a company that's labeling their things as natural is we're going to give you the raw right out front. I make sure I disclose any of the things that are a little bit ridiculous. I always make sure when I'm plugging something to make sure I inform you guys that this is a hashtag advertisement. I want that transparency.
Yeah.
Companies that have that transparency automatically get my seal of approval, and I am more likely to do business with those companies because it's more aligned with kind of how I feel, my own personal belief system. Hello, Blake, BBC. Thanks for tuning in and thanks for saying hi to us. We're actually going to be jumping into our next section. We've got some really cool visual aids that we want to bust out for you guys to also help you simplify your nutritional habits and awareness.
All right.
So what we've got over here, and this is really good, is we have the balanced plate. So with a balanced plate, when we're looking at our dinner plate and we're trying to think, hey, what should I be putting on that to make sure I'm kind of, hitting everything, right? So what do we got over there?
All right, so this is from, let's see, what's the website? ChooseMyPlate.com. And that is going to help you, if you want to go into detail with this, I definitely recommend going to that website. So this part, so this is a plate, and this can be like, I think you can I'd do your lunch this way too if you can.
Oh yeah.
But so for dinner, half of your plate should be those non-starchy vegetables that we talked about. So that does not include potatoes or corn or squash. All right, so then this is the protein. So a quarter of your plate is a lean protein. So lean proteins are poultry, fish, eggs, nuts, beans, and then the other 25% is a carbohydrate. And that can include grains, but it can also include your starchy vegetables too. Yeah. Ideally, the starchy vegetables. But actually, no, you can get like rice and stuff.
Good grains too.
Good, yeah.
So say when I'm building my plate, typically speaking, if I don't have rice, I'll have some kind of potato or squash. Yeah. And if I don't have a potato or squash, it'll be some kind of rice. Mm-hmm. Very rarely I'll have pasta. Pasta is, of course, also a carbohydrate. Typically speaking, it tends to be less starchy than some of the other carbohydrates, mm-hmm. but it also depends on the kind of pasta you're utilizing as well.
Right. There's so many out there now.
Yeah.
So many.
So the plate aside, one of the other things that we wanted to diagram here is how you can kind of use your own hand, fist, to help you quickly measure things. Because if you're not prepared or if you're not ready to get into the world of really measuring out your food, balancing out your macros, counting your calories, because again, it's time consuming and it can be tough if you're really not sure what you're doing. But some simple tricks like this, again, today's episode is all about keeping it simple. You can use your fist, just like this, to measure out what a good serving of carbohydrates, starchy carbohydrates, should look like. If you're trying to figure out what serving size of fruits you should have, that's going to be a closed fist, but the palm and the knuckles included. All right? Then when we go to an open hand, your vegetable serving, so about half your plate, should be about the size of your palm and fingers included.
The whole thing.
Your protein should be about the size of your palm, and any fats that you're eating should be about the size of your thumb.
Yeah. And if you ever do get into that measuring stuff, it's incredible how quickly you learn, I guess, and then you can kind of eyeball stuff. I was actually talking to one of my patients about it today, and she's this older woman, and she tracked her stuff for a little bit, and now she just knows how to measure it. I'm like, good.
So that's exactly it too. You start with the simple stuff. You start by getting more vegetables. You start by cutting out the sugary beverages. You start by trying to increase the good stuff that you're getting.
Right.
You start by simple visual measurements, and you start to get more comfortable with the concepts, the ideas. You start to notice that things are changing. Maybe after you've gotten rid of all the sugary beverages, you're starting to see weight loss occur. Your clothes aren't fitting quite as tight anymore, and you've actually got to go out and do a little bit of shopping.
Yeah.
So then that, a lot of times, will give people that next kind of step of motivation. All right, I want to learn more. I want to know more. I want to understand more. So then maybe that's the time where you start to say, all right, I'm going to start to track my calories. Just start tracking, just to get an idea of how everything looks.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. It's not an exact science. Definitely isn't.
No, it absolutely is not an exact science. I'm really glad that you said that, because I think a lot of people try to treat it like an exact science.
Yes. I agree.
One of the best analogies I've ever heard, and unfortunately I can't remember or give credit to where I originally got this from, but this is not my idea. This is not an original idea. They said, at times in our life, we are a cook, and at times in our life, we are a chef. When we're cooking, we're doing things quickly. We're not measuring. We're going off intuition. We're going off of, the knowledge base that we've already got. We're trying to mass produce something. Mm-hmm. When we're in chef mode, we're measuring. We're being precise. We're being very scientific about our approach. You can't be in any one of those modes for too long. If you spend too much time in chef mode, you're going to end up burning yourself out. If you spend too much time in chef mode, you're going to end up kind of hating what you're doing, because it's just so time consuming. It's exhausting. But if you spend too much time in cook mode, you'll end up cutting corners. You'll end up starting to see your measurements get a little bit more and more, or just kind of out of whack. So finding a good balance between those two, of getting very scientific and measured, learning what you can, then trying to apply that to a more loose structure, doing that for a bit till you feel like, all right, well, I've got this on lockdown. Maybe I need to invest a little bit more time in trying to make sure things are, getting back to that scientific method, and keep going back and forth, back and forth. Yeah. Now, you can utilize this strategy for your nutrition. You can utilize this strategy for your fitness. You can utilize this strategy for really any aspect of life that you want. Thanks for letting us know, Rob. So apparently Rob, who's getting his dinner ready, unintentionally, his dinner plate looks exactly like the diagram dinner plate that we showed you guys.
Beautiful.
Now,
good work.
Of course, Rob's got a little bit of a leg up because he is a client of mine, and I do try to hammer nutritional information into him pretty regularly. But I love when things like that come full circle, when people kind of let you know what's going on. So I think that's about where we're going to wrap up today's segment on keeping it simple when it comes to your nutrition. We're going to open the floor for a minute or two to you guys if you've got any questions that you want to ask. If you're watching the after recording of this show and you have questions, please feel free to drop us a comment on the YouTube page, on the Twitch channel. We'll make sure we get back to your question as soon as we can. But other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed today's topic. We will do future installments, again, trying to bring it back to keeping it simple. Because I know me especially, I tend to get a little bit lost inside of my own nerddom. I love nutrition science. I love fitness science. And sometimes I forget not everybody enjoys those topics as much as I do. And I start talking to them like they know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, oftentimes they'll just smile and nod because they just see how happy I am talking about it, and they don't want to burst my bubble.
That's so funny.
But it is good for me, especially as a teacher, to understand that you need to step back sometimes from the complex and understand that not everybody is on that level, not everybody's ready for that level, and you can't try to force it either.
Mm-hmm.
Change is uncomfortable, but when it starts to become stressful and anxiety-ridden is when we start to shy away from it. So you can't try to force it, but you should try to embrace the discomfort.
So going off of that, actually, do not take everything on at once. When we first started the episode, we talked about that it's such a daunting topic, nutrition, like trying to figure it out, and it's difficult. Just by starting by maybe picking 2 different things and getting that down, don't even think about anything else. Like, for example, stop drinking your soda, or even just cut down to 1 soda instead of 2 a day. That's a huge thing. And don't look past that because it's huge.
Mm-hmm.
It is. So keep it simple.
My favorite little anecdote. Baby steps and little bets pave the way to great success.
Mm-hmm.
So once again, ladies and gentlemen, keep it simple, silly. This is Better University, signing off.